we are live. Everyone, and welcome to this week's Wine, Women, and Words. Today we have the wonderful Kit with us to talk to us about her new journal, Writers Resist. Now, refresh my memory, this is the first week, or I'm sorry, the first month that it's been in publication. Am I correct?
We started the first week in December was our first issue, actually.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Now. It's been weeks. It's been weeks.
That is fantastic. And you were saying that you've had so many submissions. Tell everybody a little bit about what it is that you guys do there.
Well, Writers Resist, and I have to clarify that it's writersresist.com, because after we set up, we bought our domain name and set up a Facebook page and whatnot, we heard from another group called Writers Resist, but it is writersresist.org. And that's a group that put together the really cool set of readings on January 15th. Yeah, so we are different. Okay. We're not the same, and a lot of people are confused about that. But writersresist.com is an actual online journal. And as I had said, we just started publishing the first week in December. So we're still really neophytes at this, though. Those of us who are organizing at this point have a fair amount of background in publishing and editing, so it's not too painful, but it's still a challenge in its newness. But we publish weekly right now, and our goal is to publish creative expressions of resistance, both in writing and visual arts. And we were, maybe, of course, I'm not sure, but we were born out of the disaster that occurred in the recent presidential elections. And I actually got I don't usually use a lot of technology the way some younger people do, and I got a message on Facebook, which I'm not used to doing. And it was from a friend who graduated from my MFA program. I think we were in the same class. And she knew I was politically active, and she said, what do we do now? And I had been mulling over, because I'm obviously a writer and I have a blog, and I used to write a political column for the daily paper in North San Diego County. So I was used to being not only politically active on the street, but politically active in the written word. And I told her, I think we need to start something where we publish people's work, because it's going to be a long-term disaster, and we need to start resisting it immediately, and we're writers, so what the hell? So we just plunged into it. I jumped on some domain names, and we started. And I brought in other people to help edit, and that's what we have now. I think weekly might have been a stretch. I think we might go to bi-weekly at some point, but we're getting enough submissions to keep it going weekly right now.
And that's fantastic that you're getting so many submissions, so popular, which says something in and of itself. And I want to touch base for a moment on the importance of literature and the arts with resisting. As many people who are listening and watching know, I'm involved a lot with the arts over in Santa Ana with the literary festival. Yeah. Michelle's got her things cooking for starting up in Chicago for the arts. What's your take, Kit, on how important the arts are and resistance in general? All right.
Well, the arts in every form, visual art, dance, music, writing, obviously, have long been a go-to form of resistance, of protest, particularly for people at the grassroots level. It generally doesn't cost anything to express yourself in your art form, unless you're, using gold gilt paint, but it's a natural expression, a natural creative expression. And because resistance generally erupts at the grassroots level and spreads from there, it is, again, I think the go-to form, the arts are the go-to form of resistance for people, and have been for eons. You can look at art back, 1,000 years and see expressions of distrust, anger, resistance to the hegemony, resistance to the church. It's not a new thing. It's not something that suddenly erupted because of the Vietnam War or more recently because of things happening on Wall Street and well, we don't like to call it a depression, we call it a recession. And it's not just because of Trump's election as president. It's obviously a very old, very human behavior. And the arts are a very old, very human form of expression. So I think the arts are essential to resistance. And I just interviewed an author who's a professor at Cal State, no, not Cal State, let's see, San Diego State University, and a local artist in San Diego County, a visual artist, both of whom are very actively resisting through their particular art forms. And they both actually mentioned some of the same artists to whom they look as examples of resistant expression. So it's kind of fun to be in this realm right now, even though the reason we're all here is very painful. And that's one of the other nice things about art as a form of resistance, because as you all probably know as writers, art is really therapeutic. So we can not only express our resistance, but we can feel a little bit better about being in this pretty terrible situation right now, pretty terrible political situation. And that makes it feel a little bit more tolerable.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back with art and the long-term tradition of art being a form of resistance, in so many ways, it's almost like it's the only socially of resistance. People will listen, people will read. Like what comes to mind is The Grapes of Wrath during the Great Depression, showing happening with people in these impoverished situations. And when you look at somebody like the naked Trump statues, there was very little murmuring over that form of artistic resistance and the point that this artist was trying to make. But and there was so much more so much more criticism over a football player taking a knee during the national anthem than there was of what is now our president-elect and naked statues around the country. They didn't get offended and angry over it like they would if somebody was taking a knee over something as silly as, not silly, but during the national anthem.
Yeah, in our country, and I would imagine in many countries, there are certain sacred cows that if one chooses to address directly in a negative way, one will indeed get slammed for it. The US flag, we're very nationalistic in this country about our flag. You know, the suggestion of burning it, wearing it in any way just incenses some people. I think it's a generational thing, so I'm not sure that will persist as long as some other sacred cows have. But the national anthem's a real toughie. And
yeah, it is.
Say what?
I was just agreeing that yes, it is. It definitely is.
Yeah, it really is. And it's really hard to sing, so it's not the best tune for a national anthem anyway, but it is pretty. I've heard some lovely instrumental versions and some actually lovely singers producing, you know, at ball games and whatnot. But it is a sacred cow in this country. But as activists who are artists or artists who choose to be activists, it is the sacred cows that are probably most important to address. Finding a way to address them that allows an artist to feel as though their life is not at risk, or simply that their livelihood is not at risk, is a serious consideration in some contexts. I think to have a successful, he was a football player, right? I can't think of his name.
Was that Kirkpatrick?
Colin Kaepernick.
There you go.
Football?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely not badminton, right? It's sports. Yeah, so having a successful football player take that stand, particularly one of color, I think is pretty darn bold, but he's not going to lose his job over it. For an artist who scrapes by selling a painting now and then, and maybe, you know, being a gas jockey part-time, taking a stand like that is much more of a risk. And it's a much more bold action. And that's one of the challenges for artists, because in general, artists are not moneyed people. We do our art often as though it's our primary passion. It's secondary in terms of how we earn money to pay the rent or the mortgage. So it can be very threatening for artists to take on those sacred cows. For instance, the presidency. It's easy to criticize a president in conversation or to post a hostile message on Facebook or Twitter, but to stand up and publicly declare, I'm not going to go to the inauguration for a minority member of the House of Representatives is pretty darn bold now, because it could mean crummy committee appointments. It could mean there could be all kinds of backlash. So even people who have more power than, say, the lowly artist who's struggling to get by have to take risks now to challenge some of those sacred cows. So I don't recommend it outright for anybody, because when I was writing a feminist political column for the newspaper, I would get death threats at times. So it can be really challenging, but the more people who do it and join forces, for instance, the Women's March on Washington Saturday, there was a fabulous event in New York City this evening with all kinds of people from celebrities, but also a huge number of people who just showed up in support. Those kinds of things demonstrate to me that the more people you have in a resistance movement, the safer it becomes. So it's not only safe for the people whose lives might not be at risk, for those people who might normally have felt threatened, the sheer numbers make it a safer event to participate in, or a safer movement to participate in. I'm rambling.
And nobody... Not a problem. Nobody's really safe when it comes to that, and I have to laugh. We have our #1 fan. We got our first troll back in December when we were talking about feminism and modern literature and some good, alternative new books that could be classified as feminist readings, and felt the need to tell me and my guest co-host that night that Trump was going to end feminism. So coming up this year, we are going to have Feminist Storm Launch. Every month, we're going to check in to see if feminism has actually ended yet.
And so far, I think we're good, right?
Yeah, we're going to be one day in soon, and I haven't gotten my eviction notice. How about you, Michelle?
I haven't, but I have a feeling that he might check in tonight. I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
In what way does he troll you?
He just trolled us once, just the one time. Screenshot of it and circled it and thought it was hilarious and shared it everywhere.
Yeah. So he posted a comment on Facebook or something, or on your YouTube page?
On the chat while we were talking. While
okay.
he ate something or other, the chat while we talk. Because I'm so focused on the show, and once I ended the show, I saw it, and I was like, "Oh my God, our first troll!" I feel like a woman has actually made it in media. This is so exciting.
It's sort of a badge of honor, right?
It is. It really is. So they're now my favorite fan. When it comes to trolls, everybody's going to have an opinion. Everybody's going to have a comment, and you're going to have the pushback. And look at it through the lens of, I'm not going to let it rattle me. I'm still going to do what I'm going to do. And I've always been a loudmouth for, according to my mother, from the time I came out of the womb. I'm going to change.
Well, I remember.
And I don't, Michelle's going to.
Sorry. I remember one of my journalism teachers used to tell us that we would, brainstorm for the upcoming issue and pitch ideas. And whenever a topic came up that the whole class exploded over and started talking about, even regardless of if it was positive or negative, he would say, as soon as you hear that conversation going, that's when you know you have a good idea. Mm-hmm. So even if you get negative feedback, you know that you're talking about something that is important to people. And clearly this was a very important topic for this gentleman. Maybe not in the way that it's important to us.
And unlikely, yeah.
But
it's going to keep coming up for him.
Now, I know, speaking of the arts and how important it is to us and to many people who are artists and who are writers, there are, on the flip side, a lot of people who think that writing and literature and just the arts in general aren't vital features for an informed society. Just for you, how would you respond to people who have that viewpoint?
Is this people who don't think the arts are important to a culture? Is that what you're hearing?
Yeah. Yes.
Well, I mean, we just heard today about Cheeto-elect wanting to get the National Endowment.
Yeah, the National Endowment and the Endowment for the Humanities, I think. And that's, well, take a look at the inside of his suite in New York. And I know that was a horrible thing to say, and my darling Southern mother is probably rolling over in her grave. But the interior of his home doesn't indicate someone who's invested in the arts. And legitimately, if you get elected to an office, theoretically in our country, you're representing a constituency. In reality, a lot of people who are elected don't have the wisdom to put their own values aside, listen to their constituents, and take action based on the sort of collective values of their district or whatever. I'd expect Donald Trump to have that degree of sensitivity and wisdom and self-control. So I'm not at all surprised that he would talk about cutting arts funding. It is minuscule already. It's been cut before, multiple times. So it's not at all surprising.
It's like 5% of the budget. It's not a huge number at all.
Yeah, it might be less than that. But I think the point is, I imagine, and I haven't read any of those articles. I've been skimming headlines today. I was too dismayed to read in depth. But he's, I guess, of a class of people who do indeed not believe that the arts are important. And of course, those people are out there. I think that might be a majority in this country. I don't really know. I haven't read any statistics on that. It would be interesting if Pew did some surveys on that, and I imagine they might if it comes to a vote. But clearly, the arts are an essential part of any culture, whether they receive public funding or not. And the test of that statement is the fact that the arts are always present, indeed, whether they receive tax dollars or not, in every country, in the most oppressed nations, particularly among women. The arts are regularly performed at the most grassroots level, in the homes, in the kitchen, where women make beautiful artistic food, or they sew their own clothing for their kids. People are carving things that are works of art that they use to work in the fields with. So the arts will always be present with or without public funding. I mean, just look at the cave paintings from however many tens of thousands of years ago. No one was publicly funding them. Though, who knows, maybe they got a chunk of meat for it. But in reality, we as a group, we humans search for ways to express ourselves. And many of us, and I would actually guess that the majority of us, given the opportunity, would express ourselves in ways that we would perceive as creative, whether through word or song or painting or sculpting or performing something, whatever. It's a natural behavior, and the only way not to have it is to stamp it out of our children. But even in the most poorly funded public schools, children still have the opportunity, minimal though it may be, to express themselves through art, even if it's just through crayon drawings or whatever. So I don't think Trump's cutting anything, which is truly dismaying. I don't think that will put an end to the arts in any way whatsoever. If the endowment is defunded completely, private donors will step in and make sure it continues, I believe.
Absolutely. With the city of Santa Ana, in fact, I had a meeting over there earlier this evening, and I'm so inspired by how dedicated the city of Santa Ana is to the arts. They have an arts district. We have the literary festival coming up. They've received grants for the arts, and they've committed to helping fund more arts programs that also help with connecting with the school and stuff. So yeah, even I thought on the national level they end up cutting it, where it's a form of resistance really that we're going to keep it privatized, and if not privatized, on the city and local level.
Definitely at the local level. And one of the reasons I'm not at all surprised, I'm just really dismayed at the short-sightedness of Trump and his administration to be, because arts from a business perspective are a fabulous investment. Arts are a draw. They bring in audiences to communities who spend money in those communities. They go to an art show and out to dinner. They go to a street festival and spend lots of money. Arts are a great business for a community. So for a businessman to, before he even becomes president, saying, I'm cutting funding, this minimal amount of funding for the arts, is anathema to who he says he is. But of course, who knows who he truly is. So again, I'm not surprised. It's bad business to cut funding to the arts, but I do think that we have enough people in this country with money that any lost funding, or at least some of it, will be made up. But it's a bad business move to cut funding for the arts. That's why so many cities and counties invest in the arts, and states. California, where we live, has an arts council that gives money away, and a lot of different forms of public funding. Public funds come into local communities, whether it's poets in the schools, arts programs, art summer camps, public artworks placed in communal areas. Obviously, the arts are a good investment. So he's saying, I suppose, what he thinks some supporters want to hear, because clearly there have been artworks that are controversial that were publicly funded. But if we only created art that made people happy, it would become something other than art.
And art is supposed to make you feel something, whether you like it or not. If you feel something, it's a job. Like
what
my favorite.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What is this? The saying, art is supposed to disturb the comfort and comfort the disturbed?
Yes, absolutely. And if it's not disturbing, it's not really doing its job. It's nice to look at something pleasant, but if it doesn't challenge you to think about it or to feel something, then it's not really being an effective piece of art, I think. Even some of the most beautiful classical music pieces stir the heart in ways that some people might not think appropriate, particularly in the past. But that's what challenges us to be more, be better, to do something beyond the immediate, something lasting that people can appreciate and next generations can be challenged by, and encouraged to do something more and better and more beautiful and more controversial, perhaps.
Yeah, it's like Peter and the Wolf. That was really commentary on Stalin.
Yeah. So
you have that with music, and you have it hidden. So even when you try to suppress the art, the resistance comes through in some other means. You don't like immigrants? Well, there's going to be a whole bunch of books talking about the immigrant experience.
Yeah.
Art helps precipitate legislation, and it helps create the next round of politicians, and it helps get society used to new ideas and new things. I mean, heck, how long have we had a black president in movies before we actually had a black president? Yeah. We had to get society used to that idea. So Michelle, did you have some other questions?
I did. Just as a writer, when I was researching and getting my questions together and looking over the Writers Resist website, and I also went to your website and I started reading some of your other articles, and I read a feature article that you did on an artist who recently located, I believe it was from Nashville, he moved to California.
Patrick Brown.
Yes, it was a beautiful article. I guess a technical question from one writer to another. What is your writing process? How do you capture your subject so clearly on paper once you've had a chance to interview them and do all of your research, because that was such a wonderful article to read as someone who is aspiring to be a journalist.
Well, thank you for the lovely compliment. Patrick Brown is the artist I wrote about recently, and he actually made it really easy. He's a lovely, lovely person. He is indeed a little bit shy, as I wrote, but his artwork is bold and powerful, and more so recently, as he said, and I recounted in the interview, recently it's become much more political because he's so horrified at what's going on. And as someone who's HIV positive, he'd already experienced a tremendous amount of challenging interactions with people in small communities that he had been a part of. So he was familiar with oppression. And he was just a lovely person, so he made it really easy to write about him. I do have a process, and I do this horrible thing that I don't recommend to anybody, which is obsessively research my subjects on the internet. Way too much. And with someone like Patrick Brown, it's relatively a safe process, because he's, though he might be perceived as controversial by some people because he's gay and he's HIV positive, in general, no one has dug into him and written crapola about him. So mostly what I found was his work as an artist and his activism that he was involved in back in Tennessee. Some other subjects I've written about, for instance, Tom Metzger, who is a racist leader of the group called White Aryan Resistance. He actually used to live in the little town where I live in Fallbrook. It's the boondocks of San Diego County. We grow up.
Gosh.
But he lived here for a long time. He raised his kids here. His son, wrangled young racists at the high school. He did finally leave, but when I first moved to the town, and had I known he lived here, I might never have approached him. I might never have lived in the town. But because I moved here, then I found out he lived here, and then I kept encountering him. And I always had this horrible visceral reaction. My hackles would go up, and I'd get agita. And I finally, because I was writing for the paper, I finally decided, this is one of those demons that I can easily confront, because I end up behind him in the post office all the time or at the gas station. So I approached him one day and asked to interview him. And I had done every bit of research. And of course, there was a tremendous amount of information online about him, mostly that he and people of his ilk had produced. And he was so dishonest in the interview, and I took fabulous notes and whatever, but I ended up not writing about him because I realized that I couldn't find out who he truly was, because he would not let me. He lied about himself. He lied about his beliefs. I confronted him in the interview with his contradictions from what he had written versus how he was responding to me during the interview. And he was just dishonest, so I couldn't write about him. So that's not to say don't do research. If I hadn't done all the research, I wouldn't have been able to catch him in all of the lies. But I obsess when I do research on people. And that's maybe a good thing, maybe a bad thing. I don't know. But sometimes it's better to just sit down with someone and start talking to them and do it in a way where they're comfortable revealing themselves. This guy, Tom Metzger, was just too self-protective and too much of a dissembler to find out who he truly was. The closest I got was that he had a rift with his mother because of his personal philosophy, and she was a Christian. And he rejected faith as part of his race. He had sort of developed his own racist philosophy and dogma, essentially, that included rejecting any organized religion, any faith at all. So his mother essentially rejected him, and he was hurt by that. And that's the most intimate detail about his life that I got out of him. So I couldn't really write about him. Patrick Brown, on the other hand, was open. again, a fabulous artist. He answered really difficult questions, some of which I did not use in the interview because it wasn't necessary to expose him that much. And that's an interesting process to get, to learn as a writer. People might become comfortable with you and reveal things that make them, would potentially make your piece, whatever it is you're writing, all the more interesting and potentially more powerful. But at times I will withhold things that I learn in an interview because I know that the repercussions to my subject might not be pleasant. And I don't want to be the one to reveal that. I think if they want to reveal it, they need to reveal it in their own way. Mm-hmm. Did I answer your question?
You did. That was wonderful. Thank you. And I guess one of the last questions that I have for Writers Resist, that was put together so quickly and it gained so much steam. It's really a two-part question. What aspect of the publication are you most proud of, and what would the big picture dream be for Writers Resist for you?
I can't say that I'm actually proud of any of it. I'm delighted with all of it. I'm delighted with the friends who've gotten involved in it, both as editors and as contributors. I think the thing that pleases me the most about it is that I love to edit, so the editing is fun for me. But I love that people care enough, like half of the people, maybe not half, but a significant portion of the people who submit their work know that, as we say on our website and everywhere, we pay a token pittance of $10 per piece accepted if it has not already been previously published, which is indeed a ridiculous pittance. A lot of people up front say, keep your token pittance and pay the next person. So through creating Writers Resist and helping process submissions and whatnot, I'm reminded of how wonderful people are. Because coming out of that election was so saddening for me. It broke my heart. I'm 60 years old. I've been through a lot of elections. I've been a political activist since I was a kid because my parents led us to that. And I have a lot of faith in the human race, but I would say in the last few years, it has fractured a bit. And this election was took a real toll. So it's a nice reminder, hanging out, even if it's virtually via email and on a website, hanging out with writers who are generous and committed and willing to take risks, artists as well. We've gotten some really fun artwork from people. It's reminding me that indeed I actually do like people. I don't hate everybody, which is a really important thing to be reminded of, particularly at my age where you need all the friends you can get, right? So that's probably the nicest thing about it is people are wonderful. Not everybody, but people in the arts are often some of the most lovely people.
I'd love to interject and let people know, I met Kit through the Pantsuit Nation, or what was the California version of the Pantsuit Nation. Yeah. And different from the Pantsuit Nation in so many ways, where I've actually left Pantsuit Nation myself. I'm still somewhat involved with Together We Will as much as I can, because I have a tendency to stretch myself so thin in other regards. But what I love about this from Pantsuit Nation is that this puts it out there as a publication where not just people within the echo chamber of the progressives or liberals are picking it up. It's a magazine that's going out there old school, really, when it comes down to it, where you have this essence. And I keep thinking back to our book that we're reading this month, Didos Crown, where you have, it taps into the underground resistance during World War II. And I think a publication like this taps into the modern underground resistance to the status quo, whether it's Donald Trump or some other Republican or even Democrat, because we have a basic set of values that need to be loved and cared for in this country. And I love that we have it through this, literature opportunity. It's not just people saying, oh, I went to the market today and this and this and this happened. Stories, and storytelling is our oldest form of art when it really comes down to it. Well, you have the caveman drawings, but storytelling goes back a very long time, pre-recorded time, where people could tell stories and they are able to learn from them through stories, not just when you say you went to the grocery store, because how am I supposed to believe that when Michelle went to the grocery store she had this wonderful epitome of something happening? A unicorn could have come down and swept her away, and then she came back after this wonderful adventure. I don't know. I can't believe it. I have no connection to that. But when you tell a story, when you pull in my heartstrings on a story, that connects and that teaches us lessons. And that's what I love about this, and why I wanted to have Writers Resist on here, is because this is very powerful, very wonderful thing.
It's important.
It's important.
What you all are doing. You stopped again.
You stopped again.
Oh, you're back. You weren't moving for me.
Okay, sorry.
Technology. Yeah, I think what you're doing is important. I mean, there have been a lot of creative responses to the election, to the nominees for Trump's cabinet, a lot of very, very creative efforts. And some of them are similar to what we're doing with writersresist.com. But this is one of those times where it's not a territorial issue. It's not, oh, who's doing the better thing? It's how many people can we get involved in any of the things that are going on? Because I do think it is a matter of numbers. Clearly, whether you support it or not, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote. Clearly, the Electoral College contradicted that because, the way it works. And I have long been one of those people ranting about the Electoral College. In a previous life, I was a political consultant, so I understand how it works, and I understand why it doesn't work for us anymore. We no longer, have the fractured, slave states and free states that we had when this was a real issue. So I think that we will find some internal struggles, which, for example, there's been some consternation about what's going on with the Women's March on Washington Saturday. I've seen some horrendously ugly critiques of it on feminist listservs. But in reality, a lot of the members of those listservs are still going to the march, and they're enthused about it because they know that, number one, we need to feel that we're in a community of like-minded people. Those of us who are progressives and liberals really, I think, felt crushed by this election because we thought we were the majority and Trump won. But we are still the majority. Clinton, whether you believe she's progressive enough or not, still got the most votes. That means we are still the majority, but because of the Electoral College, there was this sense of, oh my God, I'm alone out here with my progressive thoughts and everybody's against me, and what do I do now? And this is really scary. And do I need to take my, my pro-choice bumper sticker off my car before I go to the grocery store, or what? In reality, we're still the majority, and going to a march, submitting writings to a progressive publication, whatever it is you're doing, having an arts festival where people get to come and express themselves creatively, the majority of us are interested in these things, and participating in them, I think, reminds us that we are not alone. If you stay home and you're stuck on your bottle of wine and you're afraid about what's going to happen, you indeed will feel alone. If you participate in one of the many groups that are indeed resisting, you'll realize you are part of a much larger group of people, a much larger community, and a group that's so large that I'm really hopeful that we will resist. We're going to lose plenty of battles, but I'm quite certain we'll win the war. And that's what's most important.
Absolutely. Wonderful words. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Everybody, writersresist.com.
Thank
Now, do
you
you have
for
a
having me.
subscription to it?
Yeah, the subscription's free. You can subscribe online. We also post each piece on Facebook and Twitter, but it looks best if you go to the website directly. If you subscribe, you'll get our weekly digest with new publication links. It's the easiest way to find it. And indeed, it's free. So join us and submit. Thanks, you all. Have fun with the rest of today's event.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, Michelle. So, Dido's Crown. We'll move on.
Yes.
We are on, what chapter are you on?
30 something.
Okay. Give us a rundown of where you're at, because I'm roughly around there too. I'm sorry, everybody. It's been such a crazy day that I just haven't been able to focus on much. So, Michelle, where are you at on Dido's Crown?
So, all right. Now, this is the part, everyone, that if you haven't been reading, we are not responsible for spoilers because they're probably going to happen. Okay, so I am at the point where Abby is basically running the show, which totally blows my mind because this whole time she's been kind of like this shadow figure in the background. Like, we knew about her. I thought she was dead. Just the way that she was talked about. And so Tom and Will are going back to Tunisia. Why can't I remember her name right now?
And
Mary and Collins are going to Paris. England. They're going to England.
Okay.
And it's kind of just like all falling apart now.
Yeah, I love how, up until this point we've had this sense of, I don't want to, that everything was together and was tying up in this nice little bow, and they're working towards getting the artifact, the whatever.
Which we still don't know what it is.
Yeah, Dido's Crown, basically. And then all of a sudden, everything just falls apart. It just goes to shit. And it's pulled out from underneath us as a reader.
Well, I think it kind of highlights a really interesting part of, political resistance, since we've been talking about that tonight. There are people who are devoted to the cause, who believe in it, who are willing to, fight and die for it. And then there are the people who accidentally get involved in it, and then they realize that it's something that they completely believe in and support. And I feel like Mary is that person who, she really, at the beginning of the book, she didn't really have an opinion on it either way. She didn't, at the beginning, she didn't know that, or we didn't know that she knew that her father died as, during the war.
Exactly how. She knew he died during the war, but she didn't know exactly what he was doing.
Right.
I think.
Yeah. But now that she's involved in it and she sees that it affects so many people that she cares about, she's becoming more actively involved instead of just kind of a passive passenger on this. So I think it's really interesting to see how she's starting to transform as a character. But
her character growth, she goes from being, I don't know, I suppose you could see a socialite, really. She's really a socialite when you start the book off. And now, by this point, towards the end of the book, she's a total badass.
Yeah, she just kicked ass in this, the two people, we don't know who they are. They rushed her cabin with Frank, and she's the one who saved the day, whereas, 10 chapters prior to that, she was tied up on a cot and some German was beating her up. So she's definitely transforming, and I really hope that we meet John, because he is such a constant presence in this book. Like, what is John gonna do? Is John gonna kill Tom and Will when he finds out that they're involved? So I don't like this John character already, but I really want to meet him.
I pictured him so much like Randall from Outlander.
Mm-hmm.
How about you? I pictured that guy, Tom. If in my imaginary casting world, that would be my Tom. Would be him.
I think that's perfect, because when you just said Frank Randall, I thought you were talking about John. So I thought, in my mind, well, okay, Frank Randall, no, but Blackjack, yes. So Frank Randall would be Tom.
I'm thinking the actor who plays that.
Yeah, no, totally.
Wonderful. They play two different characters, and they're both just so different, and he plays them both so well. I love him as an actor. He plays a great villain, and I actually want to see the last Underworld movie that came out, only because he's in it. I mean, I like the Underworld franchise, and at this point in the franchise, I wait for him to come on DVD. But once I saw that he's in it, I'm like, oh, I might have to see it in the theater, because I absolutely love him. He plays such a wonderful villain. So yeah, he could totally play John.
I think so. And I think John would be a character that I love to hate. Because,
yes.
and I hope, I mean, I don't know, you won't tell
you know
me.
how I love my villains. You know how I love my villains.
I do.
Right here. Y'all know by now that I don't find an actor remotely handsome unless he's played a villain. So let me just say this.
Oh, good. Because I really wanted him, or hoped that he would be a big player, because you talk about him so much, and it's who's going to deal with John? How are we going to deal with John? What if John finds out that we're here? That, like, okay, who is this guy? Like, is he what? And it also comes down to, what is Dido's Crown? Like, I can't, in other books that have done like this historical treasure hunt type of storyline, like the Da Vinci Code, to name like my favorite. We knew what it was from, like, at least from maybe like a little ways in. We knew what we were looking for. I have no clue what Dido's Crown is. Like, is it an actual?
And I love that. Yeah, we're in the the 30-something chapters. There's 39 chapters in the book. I'm roughly on chapter 30, like 20s, early 30s, because I've read this before, so I know a lot of it. So I'm going back and I'm refreshing my memory for the episodes. And Michelle's you're on what, 33, 32?
Something like that, I think so.
Yeah, we're almost to the end of the book, and you still don't know what the hell Dido's Crown is. And I think that is something that Julie should be committed on, because the wonder's still there. She hasn't slipped up on the secret. No, the characters know. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
So, but they're not saying what it is.
And it's killing me, because the name, okay, Dido's Crown, you automatically think like a crown, and I'm just like, okay, I don't get it. Why is it so important? Well, no, I know it's the constellation, and I really want to know what it is.
Well, it's funny because my father brought it up, and I didn't know this. My father's a big Dante's Inferno scholar at this point, I guess you could say, because he's been studying it for like years. I mean, to the point where he has bribed my siblings and I to name our firstborn child Dante, whether it's a boy or a girl. He doesn't care. He just wants a grandkid named Dido. Or, I'm sorry, not Dido, Dante. Dido would be a fun name, but I digress. Saw the name of the title of the book, he was just like, that's a great title. And then I saw him last weekend, and he was like, I need to read this book. I don't even know what it's about, but I need to read this book.
Well, I'm loving it so far, and I've gotten to the point where, when you're so into a book and you just want to know what happens that you almost start skimming the pages so you can read faster. That's where I'm at. And the one thing that I really dislike about reading on a Kindle or a tablet is you cannot mentally prepare yourself for the end because you don't necessarily know that it's coming. Like, at least
this book, I was like, wait, no, I'm not ready for it to end.
So the only thing, and usually I don't typically know how many chapters are in a book, so I don't really pay attention. So that's my only marker that tells me, like, okay, you're getting to the end, is the chapter numbers, which, like, I thank God, because I want to know, okay, Tom and Mary, like, okay, Frank and Mary, I did not authorize this moment that they had.
You did not authorize this. Are you and Mary going to have a serious discussion?
We are, because I like Frank. I really like his character, and I love that he and Mary have had this, like, downtime stuck in that shed to reveal themselves a little bit more, even if not to each other, to us.
Because I got to know Frank in that scene, and I got to like Frank. I really, gained some respect for him and got to know him as a character.
However, that being said, Tom cannot have his heart broken again. And I don't like that smile, because you know things that I don't.
I'm just waiting for the text this week. Books, we give each other the most random, most hilarious texts, and I'm just waiting for that text. I'm going to screenshot it and share it with the world. So that's all I'll say. But in my imaginary casting world, Frank, Jeremy Renner, the guy who plays Hawkeye in
oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I totally picture he would make a good Frank.
I think so too. When you said that,
especially with
someone else, and I don't know who I would cast as Tom. Tom seems like
I've got Tom casted. I already have Tom casted. I got it covered. We're all good.
Who? Who?
Matt Smith. He played the last Doctor, not the current Doctor.
Oh,
but the Crown. He's currently playing Queen Elizabeth's husband.
Oh, that's a good one. See, unfortunately, I really don't like him in The Crown. Not the actor, the character, because he's a little whiny.
Oh, I love it. I love both of them in that situation. But that's a whole other discussion for another night.
But no, that's a good actor for Tom. That's a good one, because Tom is so dashing and sophisticated, and
he's not movie star handsome. We go back to the first chapter. He's not movie star handsome.
Some dash. But yes. All right, his little James Bond came out a little bit when they found the getaway vehicle from the hospital with little Miss whoever she is. Like, Tom, you scoundrel, what are you doing?
I love it. Now, who would you cast as Will?
I don't know. I just sometimes when I read, I don't put faces in my mind to the characters. I just have I don't, I can't see faces to them. But who would I put as Will? I don't know, because who would you put as Will?
That's hard for me too. That's why I asked you. Because for me, I don't picture a specific actor. Like, I've got an image in my head.
Yeah,
I think the closest image I would have is the guy who plays Draco Malfoy in the Harry Potter movies. He comes the closest, but he's not quite there. Something similar to that.
You know who I would do? Jason Statham.
Ooh. Really?
Yes, because Will is more like the action guy. Like he, like he's the one that gets like down and dirty, and he does what needs to be done. Although Jason Statham could be a good Frank too.
Yeah, he could.
I don't know.
Will pretty than Jason Statham. Jason has a little too banged up for me, for Will.
Well, maybe
I picture Will prettier.
maybe like in the transporter days.
It's true. I picture Will the kind of person that I could just sit and just look at as a Picasso.
Don't say anything.
Yeah, he's nice to look at, but he doesn't say much. Picture him. So I don't know. We'll have to think about this. We'll have to ask Julie what her opinions are on the casting.
So Julie, prepare yourself for next Thursday. We want to know who you would cast in when Dido's Crown is made into a movie. Because
we have somebody else cast for this, with the exception of Mary, which I think I'd have to go with the girl Catherine, who plays Claire in Outlander. I think she fits.
She does fit. But that could just be because Claire is such a similar character, where she was thrown into it accidentally. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. So Julie, food for thought, homework for next week. We want your fantasy cast.
Before we wrap things up and whatnot, earlier this week from Michelle, I was really super surprised over sister Abby, and I want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, Abby, I don't know if I like her or if I'm really mad at her for not reaching out to her sister, but I feel like I'm still waiting for a ton of backstory. I probably haven't hit her backstory yet. Mm-hmm. But I feel like she probably has taken up the reins from where her father left off and stepped into the role. But she seems kind of like she hasn't lived. Like that one when Alan was meeting with her and he said that she had no laugh lines around her eyes, but she had plenty of worry lines. Like, I feel like whatever she's doing, it's consumed her entire life, and she hasn't been able to do anything else besides this cause, which I think is really sad because she was the baby of the group, and she was the one that hunted fairies and, searched for fairy circles in the garden. And I feel bad for her.
Goes back to that sister relationship. We touched on it a little bit last week. We have the sisters and that relationship with the sisters. In a lot of ways, maybe Abby wanted to be like Mary, and so she ended up getting involved in this because she wanted to be like Mary, because she wanted to do something. And I think there's a good dose of sibling rivalry. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Abby, hopefully you got to that point where you're seeing more of it, because I'm going from the backstory that I already know that we get into a little bit further down the line. But I really think that it's a sibling rivalry thing, and trying to look up to her sister, and maybe she wanted to impress Mary a little bit.
That makes sense. I haven't gotten to any of her backstory really yet, but I mean, if you think about it, I don't remember how old she was when like Tom and Will were doing their meetings with their father, and Mary was running the house, but she was little. Like she was like 7 or 8, maybe 6 or 7.
But kids still see that stuff. They still see it. They still want to emulate their big sister.
Yeah.
I remember when there was a 12-year difference between me and my sister, and I was living with my parents. I was maybe about 18 or 19, living with my dad and my stepmom. I had piercings on both ears, and I had a piercing up here in the cartilage. And all of my earrings, as many as I could, especially because it annoyed my dad. My stepmother got so annoyed with me one day because my sister had those little stick-on, and she put them all up and down her ears. And she come out, and my stepmom was like, "What are you doing?" She was like, "I'm going to be like Diana." And yeah, my stepmom was not thrilled with that.
Well, I mean, yeah, they definitely still see that, but I feel like you're right that she just wanted to be involved. You know, like she was never allowed in the conversations. She was always kind of shooed out of the way, and she just wanted to, you know, be part of the group and show Mary, especially because Mary was in charge of the household. She ran the family. You know, she just wanted to show Mary that basically she could hang. And it just has kind of escalated from there. But I don't want Tom to get his heart broken, and I don't want Abby to be a bitch, basically. Yeah, you keep drinking that wine.
Let's make me drink wine so that I don't give away any spoilers, because I think we might need to wrap this up for this week, because there's some spoilers if we keep talking about this book.
Well, we have Julie on the show next week, so everyone finish reading, and if you have questions that you want us to ask, post them on our Facebook, send them on Twitter, join the conversation next week live. Really, anyway, because we would love to hear from you. And Julie, like I said, if you're watching, we want your fantasy cast.
Yes, we need that, because I think that has to be a vital part of our discussion.
Absolutely. We need to settle the Jason Statham, Draco Malfoy debate.
And I might even go hunting for another actor a little bit more, because I really cannot buy Jason Statham for Will. I can't agree with you on this. We're going to have it out as friends, I think.
Agree to disagree.
Okay.
Well, thank you everyone for watching, and I'll be texting you as I read and prepare the screenshots.
Yes, I will, because it's going to be hilarious.
All right, everyone. Well, have a good night. Thank you for watching us.
Yes, thank you, and we'll see you next week with Julie K. Rose, author of Didos Crown.
Bye.
Bye.